But with COVID-19, it's important that we talk about the developments in the sector. Some people will look at COVID-19 as a disruptor, but we need to think about the opportunities that have come up with COVID-19. I'd like to request that the program is shared. But let me see if I can do that on my end, because we'd like you to see the program. That there is our program for the day. We've already had the opening prayer, and since we don't have much time, we just have 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and yet there's quite a bit of content to go through. You will realize that I will try and keep this really moving. So please bear with us. The content is a lot. Would like to move to actions, and so I'll keep the webinar moving. So right now, it is my honor and privilege to invite Dr. James Magara, the board chair of CASO, to come and give us what we are calling the workshop orientation. Dr. Magara, over to you.
Thank you very much, Gabriel, and welcome all of you. I'd like to specially recognize our special guests, the Honorable Minister of Works and Transport, General Edward Katumba Wamala, and Honorable Betty Amongi Ongom, the Minister for Kampala and Metropolitan Affairs. We are very, very honored that in this extremely busy season, you have spared time early on a Saturday morning to join us. Thank you very much. Welcome, Gabriel, our host, Spectrum Talk Show host as well, Radio 1. And our presenter today, Special Counsel Mijuche, who is Executive Director of Unifreight. Chairman, National Logistics Forum, and Nathan Benyima, Chairman, United Bus Owners Association, and Mr. Charles Gateba, Managing Director, Uganda Railways Corporation. Thank you very, very much. You are people who are in high standing in our country, and we appreciate as CASO that you've honored this event with your presence. A special welcome to all the participants in this webinar. From within the country, I know there are some coming from without as well, because when you put things on Facebook, we've had interest from all over. So thank you very much for joining. So welcome. My job this morning is just to give you a short orientation. CASO is a Center for Advanced Strategic Leadership, and it was formed last year. And our focus really is contributing to national efforts. And at this time, when COVID struck, we got together and to find ways in which we can contribute to what is going on. It's a think tank, so most of our work is in the brain. We have held brainstorming sector workshops with the aim of identifying opportunities occasioned by the crisis. And we've also, after the workshop, we had a big workshop which covered about 33 sectors. It lasted about 6 hours. And then from that workshop, we've had reviews, which sector by sector. Now we're beginning to look at sector engagements, and starting today is the maiden session of the webinars. Weekly, we'll be looking at different sectors. We have a membership that spans all the sectors. We have a large membership as CASO. So this morning we are focusing, we are taking this to the next level of engagements where we engage the general public to give you an opportunity to interrogate some of the views that have come out and also to express yourselves. And it's a great opportunity to interact with policymakers, with the private practitioners, and the people who are engaged in the sectors, and then get views from the public. So we are hoping that out of this will come information that will help us move ahead. Our objectives really today is to facilitate a discussion on the transport sector in view of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we are looking at the opportunity side. You have heard the saying, you may have heard the saying that with every dark cloud, there's a silver lining. Most of the time we focus on the dark cloud. We are focusing the silver lining. What are the opportunities that come with the dark cloud that is called COVID-19? We also aim to give the public an opportunity to make recommendations for strengthening and improving, in this case, transport and logistics. And we are very honored today to have the ministers who are really having their feet in what is going on. So we hope that these engagements will be useful as they hear what the public is saying, what experts are saying, but we'll also look forward to hear from them, because sometimes we have ideas and we don't realize they're already ahead of us and think about those ideas. So we do hope that out of this outcome, we will have solutions. We will be producing papers, which will be available to policymakers, to private practitioners, and having recommendations for strengthening transport and logistics. And we also hope that there'll be an increased awareness of opportunities that are available for the public and private stakeholders in the transport and logistics sectors. And as I said, we shall have a policy brief and documents that will come at the end. So we hope that what is happening now will be something that will enrich what we are doing as government, as private sector, so that out of this dark cloud, we shall have a brave new world that will emerge. So thank you very much for being part of this engagement early in the morning. And just to let you know, next week we'll be looking at education. So prepare for that as well. Otherwise, have a very, very good engagement. Over to you, moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Magara, for giving us that background and the webinar orientation. Those of you who have just joined us, you're very welcome. We're going to move to our presentation for the day. Like Dr. Magara informed you, we had an engagement where 33 sectors were discussed, and from that engagement, papers were written. And one was written on the transport and logistics sector. And today, for this webinar, we have Mrs. Jennifer Mwijuche. She's the founder and managing director, Unifreight Cargo Handling Limited, a company that provides customs clearing services, cargo transportation, and freight and trade logistic consultancy. Throughout her 20-year career in trade and logistics, Jennifer has been credited for her instrumental role in introducing a new training curriculum with emphasis on business. Noteworthy among her achievements are the appointment to serve on the Presidential Investors Roundtable, that was for the years 2007 to 2009. She also served the board of Uganda Road Fund as a director, and also the board of the Uganda Women Entrepreneurs Association Limited, UWIL, as chairperson. She is the recipient of an award from Habitat, which is a UN agency, in recognition for her leadership role in promoting women entrepreneurs in the East African community. She was recognized as the Woman Entrepreneur of the Year by UWIL in 2009, and by Association of Uganda Freight Forwarders for the 8-year contribution as the founder and treasurer. She has also been identified as one of the entrepreneurs to pilot the Authorized Economic Operators Scheme implemented by the Uganda Revenue Authority and funded by Trademark East Africa, which has helped register significant improvements in efficiency given the reduction of clearance time from 4 days to 1 day, which has led to cost and time savings, and definitely increased the revenues of the country. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our presenter, Mrs. Jennifer Mwijuche. Jennifer, you're welcome.
Thank you, moderator. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I recognize the honorable ministers on this forum, and I want to say I'm honored to make this presentation on behalf of CASO. And as we prepare for this, perhaps let me make just 2 comments. One is this presentation is geared towards stimulating our minds, and let us assume that COVID persists this year, next year, 2 years, and 3 years, and 5 to come. What would we wish to see logistics and transport sector be in order to support the backbone of the economy to continue running? And so that is the whole purpose of this discussion. What lessons or gaps has COVID helped us to realize, but which is also opportunity for us to make it better. I have also come to realize that whereas transport and logistics has been an important sector, not many Ugandans had ever paid attention to it. And I want to appreciate CASO for creating this platform and opportunity for the public to appreciate what transport it is for this economy of the country. I've also learned that the media, bad news is well received perhaps than good news. And because of the truck drivers and the COVID associated, this has promoted transport and logistics sector. And nevertheless, it is a good opportunity for this sector to be paid attention to. And therefore, we appreciate this kind of discussion, this kind of attention, that even after this discussion, the sector will receive, because we all believe that it is important sector. So please allow me to go through this presentation and say the theme, like has been provided, is COVID, opportunity to thrive, transport and logistics. And therefore I'll go through straight to making everyone that is listening to me understand what is logistics anyway, and transport. Logistics, transport is part of logistics. And so I will define on logistics, which brings in transport, and say logistics is a process of organizing, coordinating and movement of resources, people, materials, and inventories from one location to the desired location. Desired location meaning we transporters respond to the needs of the people or the client that have provided the jobs to them. And so it is to those destinations. This service then means that you should be able to deliver the goods at the right time, in the right place, so that it is available. The availability of those goods in the right place is very, very important. A good transport system and competitive system should be reliable. That means reliability means that you should be able to respond. We, together with government, transporters, and all the participants you see here, the transporters, cargo transporters, moving goods from one place, but also buses moving passengers to another, and all other forms of transport, should be able to respond to the needs. Reliability means you are responding to the needs of the users, both current needs and future needs. You are available at all times and convenient. The transport system should be efficient, meaning that it is timeliness. It should be safe, and perhaps something that we forgot to add here, it's safe, and it should be environmental friendly. The transport system should be affordable, so that then that is where the areas or parameters of competitive comes in. A manufacturer seated in Uganda, let's say a nice house of plastics, should be able to have a transport that helps them make choices, responding to their needs, the plans of their production, that to be able to deliver their goods at the time they need them. They will be safe and they will be affordable. That is when we have a transport system that supports the production and manufacturing and all other users for the sector. Now, having been able to explain what should be, we need to look at how have we been exposed, or how has COVID helped us to be exposed in as far as our readiness to be reliable, to be efficient, to be safe and environmental friendly. How have we been able to be exposed and know how we are standing? And we have been able to realize that Uganda as a country, hinterland, land linked, we no longer say landlocked. For us, we see opportunities in being land linked. And so we have been able, however, to be exposed to know that we are predominantly relying on road transport. Road transport, over 80% of our goods coming to Uganda, both imports and export, are transported by road. And this is something that has been for many years, but even then COVID has exposed it more. I remember in 2007, when we had crisis in Kenya's election, this was exposed again, that we are predominantly on road transport. But I do not know, and I think this meeting or discussion should cause us to think, how many lessons are we going to learn for us to be able to respond and prepare for a better future for our economy and for our nation? Predominantly, we depend on transport, and also the road transport itself. COVID has been able to expose us to show that we have no standard operating systems, even on the road system. It has been able to expose us to know our truck drivers have not been well trained on how to be safe and health sensitive. We have been able to be exposed to understand that actually 80%, over 80% of trucks moving on our road are from Kenya, Kenyan registered or Kenyan owned. That means that we have very little capacity to support our own economy. And so this road transport, those are some of the things. And then we've also been able to realize that at the borders, things have been messy in terms of controlling. When Minister of Health came in to do the testing, queues and crises of congestion up to 25 and 45 kilometers have been noticed. All those are issues of lack of preparedness in as far as response to crisis, responses to unusual situation is concerned for the sector. We also, under normal circumstances, like I had said, reliable transport should be multimodal. So we have come to realize that our water and rail transport are also not well equipped with infrastructure that we need. Water transport, Lake Victoria, and all other rivers we have in this country are not being utilized with the capacity that they should be supporting the transport system. We have no vessels on the water, on the Lake Victoria, which used to link us to Kisumu and Mwanza as alternative, and of course link us with rail system. Both the current meter gauge that we have, which comes from Mombasa to Kampala and comes from Dar es Salaam to Mwanza, are not in good condition. They need rehabilitation. These have been not utilized because of those issues to do with its maintenance and rehabilitation and equipping with infrastructure like wagons, locomotives, to make them efficiently serve this country. Air transport, we have all seen how air transport has been hit in as far as being able to support both movement of passengers and cargo. At the airport in Entebbe, we have realized that we have been over-depending. For transportation of cargo, we've been depending on passenger planes. And when passenger planes were shut down, that meant we had a hold of export of perishables for some time without an immediate response to be able to enable people continue exporting, because we've been heavily depending on passenger. We had no cargo planes, but also we have challenges we had challenges. COVID exposed us to realize that when we tried to attract cargo planes, the rates, air freight rates shot up because of imbalances. any plane that is coming to Entebbe, loaded, for instance, from China, did not have enough export to attract it to have a return cargo and balance the costs. So this has hiked the transportation cost by air and left us. We also have issues of land, cargo handling in as far as airport is concerned, and imbalances of trade that has left us sometimes with the option of having air freights coming into Nairobi, landing in Nairobi, and having to come by road into Uganda, which are issues that must be attended to. Like, again, we have said, a good transport system should leave us with choices that are affordable, that are flexible, that are reliable. And for that matter, gaps have been experienced or been able to be seen as a result of this COVID, that we have little options in as far as choosing modes of transport are concerned. And therefore, having been able to, we have also realized that cities, the organization of cities, metropolitan areas are having challenges in as far as organization, preparedness, congestions, crowding in our cities are risks to such kind of pandemics when they come. It means that we are having issues and we need to look at long-term solutions. We've also realized that we have financing challenges. Private sector would be ready perhaps to make changes in as far as infrastructure development, in as far as expansion and development of the sector is concerned. But we have financing challenges for us to be able, low interest, we need financing that has low interest rates, or with partnership with government with no interest at all, and have partnerships. We need to see proposals or recommendation in as far as dealing with the future of this is concerned. We have policy guidelines as well, issues. We have challenges of laxy regulations in as far as metropolitan area is concerned. And we think that it should be better organized. We should see an organized city, well planned. We should see non-motorized infrastructure being put in the roads to give people options of either walking or cycling, so that then we avoid all this congestion, or give people, we saw during COVID, people opted to walking, but perhaps they were being inconvenienced because this had not been planned properly. If we go to the proposals, recommendation, traffic congestion, I have already, I think, shared that we need to plan properly. I am sure City Council has a lot to be done to organize the city, to plan the parking yards, to choose how many vehicles should come to the city and leave others for walking and for cycling. We need to learn from the fact that we've known that the social distance is critical. So when all this is being planned, it should provide for opportunities for people to learn how to line up, how to give gaps, and all these kind of things that we've had to learn through hardship. Cycling and walking versus driving should be encouraged, because this is also good for the health of the people. We see in countries like Germany, Italy, these are some of the modes of transport that are much more common than driving. Now, opportunities for road transport. We want to see, we have seen that SOPs have been developed as a result of COVID. Journey management systems have been created by Uganda Freight Forwarders Association and NLPs, which has been able to be shared with Ministry of Health And we are sure that this is going to be a permanent system that will help us to monitor the behaviors of the truck drivers as they move the cargo. We are also want to see development of logistics hubs at the borders, especially the borders that are neighboring our countries, so that then we are able to provide flexibility when there is time of crisis. For instance, if we had a facility of a logistics hub nature at Tororo, we wouldn't have had issues to do with truck drivers, whether to be tested. Cargo would have been transshipped at that border, and then we move on without going into the hassle with the truck drivers that we are facing now. We need to have low interest rate for financing investment in trucks so that then we avert the overdependence on foreign trucks. We need Ugandans and so many other people to participate in buying trucks and participating in this lucrative business if financing could be made appropriate in as far as this sector is concerned. Rail transport. We have so many projects, investment projects being planned in the region. We all know that we have meter gauge railway, the old meter gauge railway that has been in place for many years, but it's not in good condition. We are calling upon government to try as much as possible, pay attention to this, because we all know that rail can carry a lot of cargo at the same time, yet managed by a few people. So it's a huge opportunity for us. So we need to fast track the rehabilitation. These are some of the things we feel that, like I asked, assuming COVID persists, how soon can Minister of Works and all other partners make our meter gauge efficient, make our meter gauge become an alternative transport from both sides, Dar es Salaam and Mombasa. Fast track development of standard gauge railways and link it up to our neighbors, DRC, South Sudan. These are huge markets that we need. And multimodal transport is very, very important for us to be able to also position or realize the strategic location of land linkedness to such kind of markets that God has given us. We want to see land that is available in all these border places like Tororo, Guru, Kasese, being utilized fully to create hubs. These hubs normally are urbanization opportunities. They support export promotion. They provide park houses. They provide warehouses to support our own local industries like agribusiness that we are all realizing to be becoming important. So we really need to have a railway system that is a better alternative. Urgent investment. We all know that most of our rail lines link up to the ports, to Mwanza, to Kisumu. We cannot ignore then the use of investment, the need for investing in vessels to be able to move our cargo from Kisumu, vessels to Bokassa, vessels to be able to move our cargo from Dar es Salaam through Mwanza to Bokassa. So we need to have vessels that are moving. We will need to fast track SGR from Naivasha to Kisumu. If we want to have reliable transport system, we want to see 3 modes of transport or 4 modes of transport for that matter, competing and complementing one another. We have cargo from Mombasa coming by road. We have cargo from Mombasa on meter gauge to Kampala. We have cargo from Mombasa on SGR to Kisumu. We have cargo from Dar es Salaam on the same mode of transport, rail and water. This is the only time that Uganda will have very reliable logistics system and very reliable transport system. And we believe that that should be able to give a solution to our Now, for us to be able to do that, there is need for public-private partnership.
Mrs. Mujuche, you just have 2 more minutes. So if you could bring your presentation to a close.
Okay, partnership. For us to have this system, I just want to echo the importance of public-private partnership. Every other time we have proposed transport improvement, we are told government doesn't have money, but there's an opportunity for public-private partnership only if we can be able, private can be able to be informed how many PPP projects have been defined, feasibility study done and availed for investment. Water transport, I've already talked about the vessels that we need. We need to develop, improve the water transport by having vessels and making it possible to link water with rail, with road, so that then the whole transport system is well linked and is well provided for. I want to emphasize also the air transport. We need cargo planes. We need, again, cargo planes to be able to support so that we are not relying on transport like it has happened. Opportunity for upscaling air cargo transportation is there. We want to see that there is maintenance of cargo planes by Uganda Airlines. Uganda Airlines, considering that it has just joined recently, it has a better opportunity now to be able to preparing to compete much better. Even when other airlines have been struggling, we feel that this has been an opportunity for Uganda Airlines to prepare better. There is a need to be the best airlines in as far as providing logistic support is concerned. There is opportunity to develop charter transport for smaller groups of people who want to move from one place to the other. All these are opportunities that COVID has been able to expose. I want to echo these 5 last, Gabriel, if you may allow, that Uganda can become a logistics hub, and we also take advantage of our strategic location, like coastal countries are taking advantage of them being at the coast. We need to work closely with government in as far as developing logistics sector is concerned. It's a potential sector that can move this economy to a better place. We want to operationalize the PPP Act to provide a better and effective environment for private sector participation in developing this sector. We want to examine the proposals for self-regulation that have been done by logistics platform in conjunction with the region, because this sector we feel that has matured enough to be able to self-regulate and also develop its sector much better. We want to have
I hope you'll use 30 seconds.
Okay. I think I can just say the last one, that building capacity of different ministries, especially finance, which has the PP unit, should be able to invest in building its capacity so that it can support, because much of the infrastructure development are supporting this sector. And yet PPP unit is supposed to be looking at investment in private, a partnership of investment in this sector of transport. I must say, like I started by saying, transport is an important sector. It's a backbone of the economy. And the area we pay attention as a land-linked or landlocked country to this sector, the more it will be better for this Uganda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Mujuche, for giving us that presentation that really opens up the discussion on the transport and logistics sector. For those of you that have just joined us, you are very welcome to this webinar. I am Iguma Gabriel, the moderator. All our special guests, our presenters and our discussants are already on the webinar, and you will be receiving each one of them at the right time. That was our first presentation by Mrs. Jennifer Mujuche, the CEO of Unifreight. Now, I'd like to let you know that even as these presentations go on, you actually can send in your question or your comment. At the bottom of your screen is the question and answer box, which is labeled as Q and A. If you could just go there and type out your question. If your question goes to a particular panelist, you can actually state which panelist that question is going to, and then we'll make sure that they respond to it, or at least they receive the question, and when they get a chance to respond, they'll be able to. Later on in the webinar, we will open up for you to ask your questions, but as the discussion goes on, please use that option to send your questions. We're also would like to find out your opinion on certain things, so we will be putting up some poll questions. So you may realize on your screen a poll may pop up. Just go ahead and pick your answers, and then we will show you the results from each of those poll questions. Today, we're not only using Zoom, we are streaming on Facebook and on Twitter. And so please use the hashtag CASO webinar. And the second hashtag is Thrive Transport. So the first hashtag, CASO webinar, and the second is Thrive Transport. We don't have much time, so you will bear with me that I will just keep moving quite quickly. And now I would like to invite one of our special guests, who is a minister, who is going to be our first discussant. As Jennifer went through her presentation, she talked about what the lockdown has revealed about our metropolitan areas. And the person who's coming on next is Honorable Betty Amongi. She's the Minister for Kampala and Metropolitan Affairs. Honorable Betty Amongi is a member of Parliament. She represents Oyam County South in the 10th Parliament. At Parliament, she's actually referred to as one of the power women because her time in Parliament is not on an affirmative action seat, but it is the direct constituency seat, which means she goes in and competes with everybody to win that seat. She is the current Minister for Kampala and Metropolitan Affairs, a position she has held since 2019. Previously, she was the Minister of Lands, Housing and Urban Development from 2016 to 2019. Honorable Amongi holds a Master of Arts in International Relations and Diplomatic Studies, a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Makerere University. She also has a Diploma in Gender and Development Studies from the Institute of Security Studies in the United States of America. Honorable Amongi is an advocate for human rights, women's empowerment, democracy and justice, and has served in various global parliamentary associations, including the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, the Africa Women's Parliamentary Association, and the Interparliamentary Union, where she served as a member of the executive. Honorable Amongi has been involved in a global campaign to reduce the proliferation of small arms and light weapons by encouraging the governments of the world to sign the UN Arms Trade Treaty. She also worked closely with the former prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, ICC, Luis Moreno Ocampo, to handle the case of the indicted commanders of the LRA from 2006 to 2011. She comes to us today as the Minister in charge of Kampala and Metropolitan Affairs. So join me in welcoming Honorable Betty Amongi. Welcome, Honorable. Honorable, please unmute your microphone so that we are able to hear you.
Am I okay?
Excellent, excellent. Yes, you are.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. First, I want to congratulate Ugandans for staying safe, abiding by the rules, and accepting to be locked for all this time. And I do hope that when you get out there, as we prepare for you, you will stay safe and come out with your mask. While she articulated very clearly the core role of transport in the movements of goods and services, in the movements of passengers, She also indicated the need for an organized transport system. And for us as a public good, people who are supposed to ensure that we regulate the transport system, at the core of this also is the issue of how do we organize public transport to make it efficient, first of all, to make it safe for passengers and for the goods that is being moved, to make it organized for rescue mission. Because for us as a government, we know there can be fire outbreak anywhere, there can be accident. We must make the transport system able to respond to emergency. We must make the transport system able to facilitate efficient movement and therefore decongest as much as possible to facilitate you to reduce the number of hours that you can spend on the road. Therefore, as COVID has presented a silver lining, we have been trying to make reforms in this city and the greater metropolitan. Unfortunately, many times reforms are politicized, but with COVID, you can no longer politicize COVID. You have to abide by the rules. And in the transport system, we have made key proposals as a city and the metropolitan area. While we open up beginning next week, 26th, for those with private vehicles, but also 26th for those, 4th, for those with the public transport. We are looking at how do we ensure that we are able to track that particular transport system, because tracking in the post-COVID will be very vital. First of all, in knowing who has boarded that particular public transport, who has come in with that truck. So we are having an organized system within the city for trucks that will be transiting within the greater metropolitan city. Where will you be able to park as you rest? The Honorable Minister of Works will be able to articulate more on that, but we have discussed the general policy on ensuring those on transit are able to park in a safe place, where we are able to track them, where we are able to test them. Most importantly, we are looking at reforming the two biggest transport carrier in the greater metropolitan city. That is the taxi and the border borders. In the context of the taxi, if I may start with the taxi, we are looking at having mandatory testing of roadworthiness. There are so many vehicles that studies have indicated, 2019, that in Africa, Kampala city is number 2 with the poorest quality of air because of pollution. And pollution was majorly because of the taxis and vehicles that are too old and give out fumes that pollutes the environment. The contribution of industry to polluting environment is very low. Therefore, we are now looking at all those vehicles that will be within the metropolitan city will have to be vehicles that are roadworthy, and Ministry of Works have that provision of ensuring mandatory inspection of vehicles. We are looking at stages, parks, routes, and stops. As you are aware, we are already renovating the old taxi park, one of the taxi park, which is the biggest in the city. We have already gazetted 66 stages, including parks, that all the taxi that will start operating on 26th, you will be assigned a stage and a taxi where you will operate. And when you assign that stage, within the stage, the leadership will elect the leaders. They will assign compliance officers to ensure that we mark out where each taxi will be, bearing in mind the 2 to 4 meters social distance. we have requested them to mark where people who are boarding will stand in compliance with the social distance. So we will no longer have scenarios where everybody goes to the park and are redundant. We will look at how to schedule taxis and not to make the taxi park too crowded. We are scheduling, we are having a program together with the leadership where they will schedule transport. You load after you have loaded, where the space has remained, other taxi will join the space that has remained. We are looking at color coding the stages, color coding the routes to ensure that when, as a taxi, you leave a stage, you have a route that you should not deviate from. In this way, we will be able to first of all, regulate the transport system so that they are more organized, with giving them route numbers clearly labeled, route colors clearly labeled, and you will only stick to your route. That will also help us in tracking in case somebody is sick or is tested positive. We'll be able to notify Ministry of Health that I boarded a taxi with the route number this, because the route number and the route color will be on the taxi. So this will also help us with the tracking post-COVID, but also during the time that people who board public transport might end up falling sick. We are also looking at not all taxis should be able to reach the parks, because the central business district is where most taxis originate from and most buses originate from. So we are looking at routing taxis that go into the metropolitan area. We have created 137 routes. Some of these routes, maybe about 30%, are routes that will not reach the taxi park. So they will be moving around but not reaching the taxi park, picking passengers from the stops that will be designated. So each of the route will have a stop where they pick passengers, and these stops will be clearly marked. Our technical people are already working on marking all the routes and marking all the stops. We are also amazing innovation in the market. We have met so many amazing people who have developed applications that that will track the taxis, the movements of the taxi that you can download as a passenger. So instead of going to the park, if you are already outside the park, let's say you are in Wandegea, you will be able to know how many vehicles, taxis, are coming from the city center, what time they are arriving where you are, and through that app, you will be able to know the nearest point, the nearest stop where you can go and board a taxi from. So this will decongest the city center.
Honorable Minister, I hope with that you will also provide people with free internet, that internet that had been promised various parts of the city, so that they can use that app. But the reason as to why I came in was to let you know that you have just 2 more minutes. So if you could finish with taxis and go to the other aspects as well.
Maybe to go to borders. We have also mapped stages for borders. We are going to provide them with identification. Already there are so many other online border operating in the city, and therefore we are going to use their data, but also bring on board any other new borders that will be working. We are going to separate borders that will carry passengers from those that will be acting as delivery with the delivery boxes. And lastly, we are looking at other mass movements of people. How do we introduce the buses into the city? How do we enhance the train system, the rail system, and all the tram and all those that operate that carry people in mass? So we really hope that with all the innovation that we are coming with, it will be supported and not politicized, and we be able to organize our city and have the public transport in a safe and organized manner.
Honorable Minister, with a minute to spare, Mrs. Mujuche did mention, coming up with walking lanes and just making the city safe for people who would like to cycle, those that would like to walk. What's being done in that direction?
We are already doing that. If you could see in some of the road, some of the roads already have walk lanes. If we see what we are doing now on Queensway
Yes.
and Tebe Road, we are already ramping the walkways, which will act as both walkways. And also we are looking at expanding the roads. We have a loan before Parliament, which is going to do a lot of work in the city. $288 million to ensure we include lane for buses, walkways, lane for cycling, and also to install where you can cross safely, like you can press the button and be able to cross safely in junctions that are very, very crowded. We are also digitalizing and also signalizing a lot of the other areas so that the movements are more smoother and transport flow is controlled by the signals that are within the city center.
All right, Honorable Minister, some of the Kampala roads already have those walkways, but those walkways are shared between the pedestrians, the motorcycle riders, the bicycle riders. People are moving cargo on those, moving things from place to place on those walkways. Are those walkways designated for pedestrians, and how do you ensure that they are left for pedestrians?
I think what we have started doing in non-motorized area, if you go downtown Loom Street down to Namirembe Road, you will see what we've done. Now we are going to put poles in between, whereby it will not be possible for someone to ride a border. So you will have poles where you are able to pass in between. So that will then make the borders and the cyclists not move in the walkways. And we're also going to create lanes specifically for that group of borders and the bicycles.
All right, Honorable Minister, thank you very much. There are already questions that are coming in for you. So at the appropriate time, I will relay those questions to you so that you can respond to the participants that are sending questions your way. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to move on to our next discussant, Honorable Betty Amoye. Thank you very, very much. But I'd like to inform you that please, if you have a question as we go along, just go to the tab that is labeled Q&A and type your question there, and we will make every effort to ensure that the person you've directed that question to actually responds to it. On Twitter and Facebook, we're using the hashtags CASO webinar and Thrive Transport. We're using two hashtags, CASO webinar and Thrive Transport. So if you'd like to engage in the conversation on social media, please use those hashtags so that we can track your questions and your comments. Okay, would now like to move to our next discussant, who is the Honorable Nathan Byanyima, Chairman, United Bus Owners Association. This is a position that he has held since 2006. He's the current board chair of the Construction Sector Transparency Initiative, COST, an international initiative that works towards transparency and accountability in the public infrastructure, projects. He served as board member, Uganda Road Fund from 2014 to the year 2020. That's April 2020, just a month or so ago. Honorable Byanyima represented the people of Bukanga County, Isinjiro District in Parliament from 1996 to 2011. During his term of office, he served as vice chairperson of the Sessional Committee of Works, Housing and Communication from 1998 to 2001. He later became chairperson of the Sessional Committee on Physical Infrastructure from 2001 to 2009. Please welcome with me Honorable Nathan Byanyima.
Thank you. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are loud and clear. Please go ahead, Honorable.
Thank you so much for this initiative. I hope it will be the beginning of many, many more in this particular sector. Because as Madam Uche said, this is a sector that has not been taken care of by the people, especially not caring to know the nitty-gritty of what happens in this sector. And I must appreciate that the presenter presented so well. I think this is the time, like a wake-up call. This has been a disaster, but I think we better take the opportunities to know where we are. This is the time, I think, for government and the private people to come together and pattern and make sure that the transport sector is well catered for. We have been entirely resorting a lot of our funds to the tarmacking of the roads, opening up as many roads as possible. And I can appreciate the government has done a commendable job. So the Honorable Minister must be appreciated that work has been done. We have opened the Eastern Axis, Western, Midwestern. Now you can travel well in this country. But now I think this is the time. This COVID-19 brings us to look at water, rail, transport. Because the money we have been spending on tarmacking the roads, if we could close an eye on one financial year and put it to the direction of the rail and water, I think the transport sector would move to a higher level. So in this, we must be able to set priorities among priorities. I have always said that, especially roads, while people, all of us here, we can have alternatives to other sectors like health. You know, if somebody is sick, you can take your mother to a private hospital. Your child, if you can't go to Budo or Namagunga or any other government school, you can take him to a private school. But for roads, it's a mandate of government. And this is where the transport sector lies. So we feel that this is the time for us to have most of the resources diverted to the transport sector. Because logistics, as she said, it is just in time. Transport should be reliable and it should respond to the people's wishes or needs now and in the future. So we have seen so many loopholes, and I think it is the time for us to go back on the drawing board to ensure that our people can be able to be serviced with good transport. When I look at the railway, for example, I was very happy when I saw recently the railway corporation transporting our oil or fuel through the ship, which used to be at times, sometime back, if it had been there and we had really put a lot of effort and funds on it, that would not have a problem of trucks now at the border and bring this pandemic in Uganda. So we feel that we should divert our resources to the railway and water transport so that at the end of the day, we can save on our roads. Imagine if we had this railway extending to Kasese, to Rwanda border, to Congo, how much we would save. So I call upon the Honorable Minister of Works that we should go back on the drawing board to ensure that some money can be, more money, funds can be resorted to that. But members, I must go back to the transport, especially the buses. Being a chairman of the buses, you can see when the Honorable Minister of Kampala was talking, he talked of the borders and the taxis. Then an oversight on the buses. These buses of ours that we have replaced the big fleets that used to be in Kampala, UTC and People's Transport, which were solely owned by government. But as soon as the government divested itself from this private business of transporting the passengers, our people, then we took over from that one. But I can assure you that it is not an easy sector to manage, like Madam Uche has said. It requires government intervention. All over the world, transport sector is subsidized by government. And we need this government to put in a hand. Because like I can tell you that all these buses, they cost very expensively. A bus costs the tune of about $180,000. You can see how much it is. So if you find that people have buses, but the way we have been conducting ourselves, it has not been a very healthy manner or a conducive environment. But this COVID has exposed us so much And I think we must look back and see that we have not been doing good business. The hygiene, when you look at these bus parks where we operate from, this is the time now for us to go back and say that we have been working in a poor environment, very unhealthy, and we get into the right place. Because I could call upon all of you who are this and who are listening to us. It's good for some of you to walk to the park, like the minister said, if you go to the old taxi park or the new taxi park and see how people operate. They are really operating in a very difficult environment. And with this pandemic, you cannot be able to survive. People will die. I am happy the president has been able to stress so much on physical distance, being far from each other so that we could be able to live comfortably. But with the parks, especially when you look at the bus park, the Chisenyi bus park terminal, and the opposite one, there are two of them. But if you go there, you will find it is unhealthy. So this is the time for us to think seriously and ensure that this bad pandemic should bring us to a better level, whereby the government can think of getting a one bus terminal outside the metropolitan place of Kampala and be somewhere like near the northern bypass, whereby a bus going to Guru, northern region, or eastern, western, or midwestern, still the northern bypass is able to serve. So we must be able to think now and ensure that we get out of the mess we have been in. And you can see, for example, today, if you walk into the casualty ward in Mrabu, it's empty. It's empty because, which means we have had a saving, because every day we have been having 7 people dying, of course, border. And that means annually we lose 4 trillion shillings into the money that go into treat the people of accidents of borders and even taxis. So accidents, road safety has not been.
Honorable, there's also accidents from buses.
Yes, I'm coming. Even buses have been causing accidents. But if you read the records now where we are, the Minister of Works has been so careful, very keen to put us on our knees to ensure that we repair our buses properly, the speeds are maintained, these errant drivers are checked, because each driver must have a badge, he must be strictly vetted by the police and the Minister of Works. Transport Licensing Board Department has been very vigorous. I can appreciate the Minister of Works. The buses accidents have reduced almost zero, especially this year and last year. You will check from the records. But the borders are killing people. And who are those people? The people between 18 to 45, the biggest number of the population we have, which means eventually as we go along, we shall be losing quite a number of useful people, for this country. We are now saving because the borders have been told to carry cargo. I wonder why even we should be thinking of even having borders again, carrying people. If we are thinking of bringing the buses in town, which I have seen, I saw 2 yesterday. So I call upon this government, especially the ministers, let's not go backward. This would have time to have the borders out. Let's have one bus terminal in Kampala for all the buses and well gazetted with all the amenities that would serve our people. Because how does this COVID help us? We should not come out of COVID with empty hands, because it has shown us that when we are investing, we should even know the risks involved in our businesses that we are putting in. We are going to be with these effects of the pandemic for 2, 3, 4 years to go ahead. So we are going to live with it. But we must prepare ourselves to have better living conditions for our people. All of us Ugandans, we use bus transport, we use taxis, we use borders, but we can see the dangers involved. And like enough, most of you who are there on this panel, you move out of this country and you see how most of the cities are developing. We can't continue like this. I think this is a timely wake-up call, as I said, that we must move a bit faster to ensure that this time we have had in lockdown, that's when changes would have been made. I know we lack funds, but we should be able to change to better methods, so at the end of the day, we don't have this pandemic with us every other day. Yes, it seems you are coming in.
Yes, Honorable, you spoke about social distancing, and you focused on, the area of the park. But with the partial easing, the passengers on the taxis and on the buses are going to be required to also distance. Are your members ready for this measure that's being taken to limit the spread of COVID-19?
That this has been a wake-up call to all of us, and we have been thinking seriously about it. We are going into this one. That's why I have even requested to meet the minister before, both Minister of Works and Minister of Health, so that we can actually go into details of the need and ability of how we can improve. Because most of the people we deal with are really our raw cadre people in this country. Citizens really who travel from here to Kisoro, to Guru, everywhere. They are not people who travel in those private cars. So they are very difficult to handle. And you know what, like the touts, His Excellency the President has said he doesn't want these touts, but you know what they have been doing? Shouting all over, before the bus leaves in Kampala, these touts bring people, and you pay them money. That has been a big number of people who are employed in that type of business, just to guide people, but not even in a disciplined manner. No. So we have been living in chaos, and I think we are coming out of this chaos together with government. But we want the government to ensure that they also look at stimulus package for the bus people. For example, we are talking of taking half of the bus. That means that we take half of the bus, but you will continue consuming fuel that you have been consuming when the bus is full. The cost of the fuel is going to remain. That means the people must be prepared to pay double the fare, which would hurt the people, our people that we normally take. So we are saying, if the government came out with a stimulus package that would help the bus people, waive off some of the charges that we pay, quite a number of charges. These municipal council fees, what we pay everywhere, even the parks. We had our park, KCC sold it to individuals who have put up malls. Now we are talking of repairing, maintaining the old taxi park. Why are you repairing for the taxi park and you don't think of the buses, which should be encouraged, it's a mode of transport that we should be encouraging by now. Like I'm talking, I would do away with the trailers and move on the train and even the vessels. That's the best way to go, because we're a poor country. Since we have those facilities of water, we should utilize it. So I would want to see getting out of this confusion in town if we have to live peacefully and save people's lives.
All right. Well, you just reminded me of a contradiction there. Honorable Byanyuma, thank you very much. We need to move on to the next presentation, but you'll have a chance to say something a little later. Well, the Honorable Minister for Kampala informed us that they're repairing, doing some works on, the old taxi park. And yet the plan seems to be that we are moving to buses. So you're moving to buses, but you're concentrating on repairing the taxi park. Not too sure whether those two plans are moving in the same direction. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we now need to move on. Our next discussant is the chairperson, National Logistics Platform, the East African Customs Agent on Freight and Forwarders, Dr. Marianne Sebunya. She is a distinguished leader in the freight forwarding industry in East Africa. She is the founder and managing director of BTS Clearing and Forwarding Limited, one of the leading freight logistics companies in Uganda and in East Africa. She is the chairperson of Cargo Freight Station, a leading company in East Africa. She is also a consultant in the freight logistics and transport sector and chair of the board of Associated Freight Logistics Center, a consulting company in Uganda. Dr. Sebunya is a founder member of both the Uganda Freight Forwarders Association, that is UFFA, and the Federation of East African Freight Forwarders Association, FEAFFA. She is the immediate past chairperson of UFFA and the president of FEAFFA. Dr. Sebunya is also a board member of the Private Sector Foundation of Uganda, chairing the National Logistics Platform, and until recently, she chaired the Transport and Logistics Technical Working Group of the Presidential Investor Roundtable Forum. She served on the board of East African Business Council and of Trademark East Africa, an organization of 12 donor countries and development partners supporting East African integration and increased trade. Dr. Sebunya is the current chairperson of the Uganda Road Fund Board. Marianne has also served and supported many public sector committees, fora, and boards under various ministries, notably the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Works and Transport that we have represented today, Ministry of Trade, Ministry of East African Community Affairs, and the East African Community Secretariat. She was involved during negotiations for the Common Market Protocol and the Customs Union Protocol. She wrote and presented the private sector position on the single customs territory model, which was adopted by the East African community. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now listen to Dr. Sebunya. Welcome.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, Castle, for inviting me to participate. It's my pleasure always to share my knowledge and experience. I wish to recognize the ministers present in this discussion. We thank you and welcome you. It's always a pleasure for us to interact with the public sector as we put our wish list across. I wish to thank the presenter, Mrs. Jennifer Mwijike. She presented very well, but looking at the time, I think she did extremely well. And those who know us in East Africa think we are different physically, but when they look at me, sometimes they call me Jennifer. When they look at her, they call her Marian, because our views and dreams for the East African region and Uganda are always the same. I thank you, Jennifer. It was deep. You tried in the circumstances, but I will now not go there because she did well, but re-emphasize that she mentioned briefly that transport and logistics is the backbone of the economy, and many people don't seem to get it. I wish to explain that it becomes the backbone of the economy because it impacts on every business that we do. Every sector we are trying to support to be successful and competitive in the global market, like agriculture, like manufacturing. If transport is not efficient, or the supply chain, then they never arrive in the market competitively, which is in the end, all our efforts are in vain. So going back to COVID, which is what is giving us the opportunity to discuss publicly some of the challenges which should actually translate into opportunities. I wish to highlight a few challenges that we could take advantage of and turn them into opportunities, but also carry them forward. We have learned lessons which should not be in vain. The first one, which I would start with so that I don't lose it along the way, which is very, very important and also impacts on everything we do, is the public-private dialogue or public-private partnership that we have been forced into to discuss with our counterparts in the public sector to overcome the challenges brought by COVID. So I wish to re-emphasize that government needs the private sector, needs to hear from the private sector what is practical, what is workable, what we need in order to move this economy to another level. It's the private sector that will move the economy, that will bring the economic growth. It's the private sector. So we need to work together. My appeal today is that we need to work together and I've seen it during this challenge, and I take this opportunity to thank Honorable General Katumba for embracing the private sector and working with them to solve some of the challenges that have come. I also wish to thank the Ministry of Health that we are working with to come up with a journey. We have come up with a journey management system that has focused on our driver. We have been tracking as public sector, customs and Uganda, all the governments, they focus on the cargo and never focus on the driver. Even us who employ the drivers never focus on them. It has given us a challenge, and we have come up with the best way to look at the drivers' welfare and the tracking and tracing of them at every point of the journey. It has been, I think, negligence also on our part, because you get your 200,000 vehicle, you give it to a driver, you do not know where they are. Some of the logistics companies have behaved like that. So I wish to say that the lessons learned, like using technology and working with the public sector, we should carry them forward and enhance them. And talking about embracing technology, look at what we are doing today. We sit in the comfort of our homes and we are able to discuss on Zoom and come up with policies, recommendations, and things like that. So I also wish to say that there is a need to enhance the use of technology, ICT, and carry this country forward. When I say that the private sector and the public should talk, it's actually deliberate by our governments of the East African community. In the treaty, it says that the private sector shall lead. It shall be the engine of growth. But when we are supposed to be the engine of growth and we are not moving in tandem or working together, sharing ideas, coming up with policies together, then it's in vain or it never takes off. And we find public sector developing policies that come to us, and then we resist them and we waste a lot of time. If we were to move forward in development in 1 year, you find we are moving in 7 years. For example, there are things that we recommended 10, 20 years ago that were never catered for, but right now, because of what has happened, this pandemic, we are running back to them, and then we are saying, we wish we had started that 20 years ago. So public partnership and dialogue, we need to get there.
Doctor, you have just 3 more minutes.
Yes, thank you. And another thing we would emphasize is the mindset change. When we talk of public-private dialogue or partnership, we need to have mindset change in the public sector to look at the private sector as partners in development and not people you are supposed to regulate. We seem to have the public sector wanting to regulate and dictate to the private sector, yet they should be working together, not to pull strings. I'll end up with sharing something that I learned from, to emphasize this, that I learned from President Mugabe during one Smart Partnership conference in Kampala. I had an opportunity to sit with him on a table of 10, and each table is given a president and a question to deliberate on and present. And our question was, what stops countries from realizing their national dream or vision? And the only president we had on the table was President Mugabe, may his soul rest in peace. And we asked him, tell us, have you realized your vision? And he said no. He said, why? He said, why not? And he said, because of the colonialists. And we said, but they are long gone. What has stopped you from doing what you want? He said, because of the monster they left behind. And we said, what monster? He said, the civil service. We said, but why don't you dismantle it and start afresh? And President Mugabe said, because you need them to dismantle that structure. So I wish to appeal to our public sector colleagues on this platform to address mindset change as we go into public-private dialogue and partnership to take our country to the next level. I thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much. And thank you for widening this to the East African region to make us understand the fact that we are not operating in a vacuum. We have to work with our neighboring countries, and what happens there affects us over here. I just, all right, we need to move to the next, the next discussant. And our next discussant is Engineer Charles Kateba. He is Managing Director, Uganda Railways Corporation. I'll just very quickly go through his profile. I will summarize it. For all our discussants and our special guests, their profiles are a lot longer, but we have to cut them so that, so that we save time. But also we need to mention some of these things because it's important for you to know who is speaking to you and from what sector and what experience they come with to the table. So Engineer Charles Kateba is a Ugandan manufacturing engineer, a managing director and board member at Uganda Railways Corporation. He began his engineering career in 1982 with a Master of Science in Engineering, Manufacturing Engineering and Machine Tool Design, and attained extensive knowledge in railway transport management, public-private partnership management, manufacturing and maintenance engineering, concession monitoring, transport planning and development, and supply chain management. Mr. Kateba has also attained several courses in railway engineering and management from the UK, Pakistan, Sweden, and Denmark. He is a founder member and former General Secretary, Uganda Metal Industries Development Association, a member of Society of Manufacturing Engineers of the United States of America, and a member of the Uganda Institute of Professional Engineers. Engineer Kateba, you are very welcome.
Thank you very much for that very elaborate introduction. Good morning, members. Especially, I greet my minister, Honorable General Katuma Wamala, my former board member, Honorable Byanyima, and my colleagues in the transport and logistics sector who are here present. I want to thank the presenter, Jennifer. Thank you very much for well elaborating the challenges and the opportunities that COVID-19 has presented. I specifically want to thank you for referring to the reaction to the challenges in Kenya in 2007 and 2008, which unfortunately we did not take fully advantage of the lessons that we learned then. I will not go back to the issues that you raised. Because of the limited time, I want to focus on what is being done, what is planned, and what is possible to do in this short time. Fortunately, the COVID challenge came when we have mostly completed our medium and long-term plans. The challenge that we have had in the last 3 years has been the short-term plans. As you will know that from 2018 March, we took over the concession from Rift Valley Railways. And we had a short and medium-term plan lasting about 3 to 4 years that would quickly turn around the railway. It looked at funding of about 38 billion per year but unfortunately, we've only been able to raise about 40 billion in the 3 years. This greatly curtailed our short-term measures that would have seen the improvement of the infrastructure, both on rail and water, and also rehabilitate our second vessel, the MV Pamba. Now, what do we have right now as plans? We have done some minor repairs on the Port Bell line. So therefore, the water transport to Mwanza and Kisumu is open. We have also recently opened the line to Jinja Pier, and therefore Jinja is now also connected to the water transport system. We still have work to do, and the ministry has taken measures to handle the repairs of MV Pamba. So we hope that if this is done within 6 to 12 months, we shall have 2 ships available. On the rail infrastructure, we have a very elaborate plan to rehabilitate Kampala-Malaba line. We'll be starting with the heavily trafficked sections of Malaba-Tororo and Kampala-Mukono. So in the coming financial year, we will embark on the rehabilitation of Kampala-Namamve, 13 kilometers, and Kampala-Tororo-Malaba, 15 kilometers, bringing to the total of 28 kilometers of track that will be completely renewed with new rails and new concrete sleepers. This will improve the mobility for passenger services in Kampala, but also the traffic from Malaba to Tororo, so that we can reduce the transit time, increase the safety and reliability of those sections. Now, to add to that, we have introduced ICDs. We have an active one in Mukono and another one under construction for Gulu station. We have another plan for that is really coming in as to establish a multimodal hub using the SGR project. But because of that, the delay of that SGR project, we are now looking at an interim measure where we will be working with the public sector. Now, Jennifer, in her presentation, mentioned 2 challenges that have made the investment or the development of rail and water transport lag behind. One of them was the financing challenge. And I have seen a question online, which I answered briefly, that is private sector. Can private sector come in to invest with rail? And my answer online was yes. On wagons, we can receive private investment via lease companies, rolling stock lease companies, but you can, private sector can also directly come in by providing rail transport services over our network. That is possible. It has been done before with Tanzania and Uganda Railways, and it can be done again. However, in order to facilitate that, we need a robust, safe, and reliable infrastructure. And that's where we as Uganda Railways and government have focused for now, that we need to have a robust rail and port infrastructure. Then the private sector can come in with the rolling stock and operations over that infrastructure. On the water system, we are also working with the private sector to set up dedicated spaces at Port Bell to be able to provide scheduled freight services between Port Bell and Mwanza and Kisumu. As you will have noticed, we recently started carrying fuel from Kisumu to Port Bell, and that is going to be expanded to Jinja, where the national oil reserve tanks are situated, and that will improve the turnaround of the wagons, because we will run it that we need to address. The immediate challenges, because COVID is here with us. What we need to ramp up are the locomotives, because with locomotives we can carry more trains from Malaba to Kampala, but also we can be able to go into Kenya. For example, we can move up Eldoret and pick up fuel from there, and also move to Naivasha and pick up containers and other bulk cargo via the MGR. But with the limited number of locomotives, we are not able to do that. Mr. Moderator, I don't know how much more time I have, but I wanted to talk about passenger service, the plans for passenger services.
Very briefly, but you can talk about it very briefly in 2 minutes.
For passenger services, we have 10 coaches, passenger coaches, which we have lined up for 2 years for rehabilitation at the workshop, but we've not received the money for this rehabilitation. When we started the passenger services, it was on the understanding that this was a public service obligation operation, whereby it was supposed to be supported by government through the KCCA. Now, we received money from KCCA for 2 years under Rift Valley Railways, but since RVR left, we've not received them the money. And this is the money we had hoped to use to rehabilitate the coaches, and having these 10 extra coaches on board would help us to open up passenger services to Port Bell and to Nalukolong. In the medium term, however, we provided for purchase of rolling stock to enable us to extend passenger services to Mukono and Kiengera initially, and later to Bujuko along the MGR line. Remember, I mentioned earlier that we are going to rehabilitate actually reconstruct the line between Kampala and Namamve completely with new rails and new concrete sleepers. But alongside, we are also going to extend the line up Kiengera with reused material that we shall recover from that relayed from the eastern extension. So that's the short-term plan. Other intermediate plans include extending passenger services to Bujuko and Mitiana eventually, and also to Jinja. And at this time, we shall introduce units. These are high quality passenger systems where you have self-propelled coaches that can be combined to increase the number of coaches at peak times during the off-peak period. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, engineers. Some of these ideas that you have shared and plans have been, plans that you've had for a while, and the president even referred to some of them in his addresses. Are there timelines? Because mid-term, long-term can be, that's left to our imagination. Engineer, did you hear the question? Okay, I think Engineer Kateba's video has frozen. So we'll move from the engineer, but for all our panelists, if you go to the Q&A tab, there are questions that have been directed to you. We may not have the time to read all the questions there, but you can do like Engineer Kateba did and respond to those questions in the Q&A tab. We have very many influential people in the transport and logistics sector that are on this webinar. And unfortunately, because of time, I'm not able to introduce all of them. However, right now, I would like to introduce one member who is known to probably all of us. She is the executive director of UNRA, Uganda National Roads Authority. We have spoken quite a bit about the road infrastructure, and I think it was Honorable Byanyima who spoke about the fact that who made a request that money is reduced from roads and emphasizing funding roads and look at water and rail transport. Mrs. Allen Kajina, if you could unmute your microphone, let's hear from you. Welcome.
Thank you, Gabriel. Good morning, everybody. It's been quite interesting listening in to the presentation and the discussants, and a very engaging conversation. Well done.
Thank you.
Oh, the question, sorry. I didn't realize you were asking the question that Honorable Byanyima asked. Well, the demand for roads is exponentially increasing every year because of the still underdevelopment of rail and water. I think the demand on roads will reduce when we're able to increase our capacity on water and rail. And sharing the little budget that we have for transport infrastructure with the several other competing demands makes it very difficult to at this time say reduce half of the UNRA budget and put it on rail. Primarily because we may have connected the main arteries across the country, but we still have to connect off these arteries to reach the primary growth areas in the district, say for tourism. Tourism is not on, tourists and tourist spots are not on trunk roads. They're right in the middle of the country or on the borders, and we must be able to communicate so that growth is spurred. And rail and water are critical as primary infrastructure, but secondary infrastructure, which is connection to primary growth areas, is just as critical. If you do a rail right now, as Engineer Kateba has said, he's going to do rail, say from Malaba through Kampala, say all the way up to Katuna. However, somebody must take off that line into the countryside. So we will continue to require roads, and therefore the need is not just to share the budget, the need is to actually increase the budget for growth of the infrastructure. And very much the direction must be through the private and public partnerships, because there is not enough revenue we are collecting to do infrastructure.
All right. One of the things that COVID has reminded us of is some of these things should have been done yesterday, and yet, there's still these delays. What are you doing in your sector to ensure that, we're moving quickly?
Delays in relation to what? To procurement or to repair or to what? I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Actually, delays in all those areas. One of the panelists did talk about the fact that some of the plans that we're talking about today are plans that
rolling out the plans.
Back, precisely rolling out, getting the financing for starting the projects, finishing the projects on time. There's so many delays.
There are multiple reasons why projects take a long time. Financing is just one of them. But we have a complicated land tenure system in Uganda, and accessing land for infrastructure development is a huge complication for all of us in infrastructure development. And then, of course, we must be able to build the capacity that can actually deliver infrastructure, road infrastructure, rail infrastructure. We depend heavily on external contractors, and that means it's very expensive on the country. The passing of the bill on local content is critical for Ugandans to fully participate in developing our own infrastructure, then we can retain the money in Uganda. So like I said, a whole host of things have caused the delay of planned infrastructure. But I also think that we must not be this pessimistic, because I think there's been significant progress over the last 10 or so years in making sure that their base, the infrastructure base, is solid. The growth that you see of our economy, the 6% we have maintained over the last 10 years, keeping this year out, is because their infrastructure has grown. Transport infrastructure has grown, and therefore we've been able to sustain the economy because of that.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Kajina. You did talk about the land, the difficulties with procuring land and just land management. Honorable Amongi, are you still on? If you could unmute your microphone. Honorable Betty Amongi, would like to benefit from the fact that you are the immediate past Minister for Lands. And one of the participants did ask, what's being done to deal with our complicated, land systems that just make infrastructure projects very expensive. Even as we talk about the railway, there are all those problems of encroachment that are causing delays. Mrs. Kajina has also raised the ones in the road sector. If you could share with us what's being done and what can be done to deal with those delays and hiccups.
Currently, there is a program in Ministry of Lands, which I left ongoing, being funded by the World Bank. This project is supporting the Office of the Chief Government Valuer to map out the country, first of all, to give price for land, an estimated price for land in each of the areas of this country based on peri-urban, urban, and rural. This will then be gazetted as the known price of land, and this has happened in many countries. It is only in this country that someone can come up and give their own price for their land. The other policy reform that is being undertaken in the Ministry of Lands is to amend some of the regulations and the Land Act to make provision where somebody has rejected the price that has been determined by the Chief Government Valuer. The government project can proceed and work continues. On the multiplicity, there's also an amendment that has been cleared by Attorney General, where you are unable to determine the owner of the land in the case of absentee landlords, but also where there are conflict in the family or there are multiple ownership of land, maybe Bibanja holders, somebody who has rented from the Bibanja, the landowner, and there's contention, then there will be an escrow account where such money can be deposited and work can continue. So there are quite a number of reforms that are being undertaken to face this challenge. But the biggest one, which we are already undertaking as a city, and I think it is one of those that also in the corridor, the East African corridor for acquiring land for oil, is to ensure that we acquire as government land at once. Instead of me acquiring only for my need as a city, I will be able now to acquire land which is more than 60 meters. And this, I will use part of it for the roads and leave part of it as government land, so that when electricity, when water or any other utilities require land, they will now find land which has already been acquired by an entity which is either a local government or UNRWA or KCCA. So we are being encouraged now to acquire a bigger piece of land, not only enough for a particular project, so that in future that land can now support. But also there is another program which is to bring all the other ministries, MDAs together to monitor what has already been acquired so that no further encroachment by people, because sometimes we acquire land, then money is not there to implement the project and it delays. So some of those reforms which are now going to be digitalized to monitor and also to acquire a corridor and ensure that that corridor is well marked and it is monitored, that there's no encroachment. That will save in future those who would want such land to be utilized.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Minister. When you spoke earlier on, you did talk about some of the reforms taking place in Kampala. You did even raise this with the president. The president has spoken about, for example, digital registering borders. And on this platform, we have a representative from probably the most popular border service, that is Safe Border. He is the founder or co-founder, Mr. Ricky Thompson Rapper. I'd like to invite you very quickly to just let us know what you have learned as Safe Border and what you're doing to continue improving the sector. Ricky, over to you.
Good morning, members.
Good morning, Ricky. We can hear you, and unfortunately, we just have a minute and a half for you.
That's perfectly fine. For us as Safe Border, first, thank you so much for inviting me to participate on this very important discussion. Of course, since the coming of COVID as Safe Border, we've made a very big transition in making sure that still, even during the lockdown, we continue to serve the people of Kampala. Remember very well that people knew us for only carrying passengers, but at Safe Border, we decided, of course, with the large network of our drivers, given that they're very dependent on their earning, and they can barely sustain themselves 2 months, 3 months without working. So we decided to venture, of course, in partnership with UNCDF, to venture so much into delivery services. Already we were doing delivery services of food, but then in consultation with KCCA and in close relationship with KCCA, with the direct support from UNCDF, we're able to venture into delivery of essential items, things like food items, basically. Basically, fresh items were not on our platform, and very few players were into that area or had invested into that sector. So what we did, with the help of KCCA, we went to the different markets, consulted different leaders, understood their need, and we were able to build a better system that allows people now to do to order fresh items, maybe nyanya or butungulu, all these fresh items from the different markets, and have them delivered to their doorstep at affordable rate, at the same price that they would have purchased it when they go to the market. So this has been our approach, basically. And also we have encouraged a lot of digital. We have also encouraged digital payment, because for us as Safe Border, of course, in 2017, we had a lot of requests from our drivers that they are working and they are earning, but they are not able to save. So they requested that if there's a way we could help them save their daily earning by embedding it in the system so that they don't take cash. So in 2017, we were able to build a Safe Border wallet that allows our drivers to continue working and earning, but then they just continue seeing the figures, and then they get it at the end of the week. So with the help of our e-wallet, our wallet, also we encourage a lot of cashless payment during this lockdown. Of course, it's something new to many people, but of course, you also be aware that mobile money had already come in with like the Momo Pay, plus there's been a lot of recommendation and encouragement for people to embrace digital payment solution or cashless payment. And there are also, of course, there are also a lot of other initiatives that basically focuses on fintech. And because it's,
since you are ahead of the pack, what are some of those challenges that you have encountered that government should come in, that other players should come in and address in order to make it, the sector run more smoothly, more effectively, even as we go into the next phase of, partial opening up?
I think the biggest issue that we have as people from the private sector, as Dr. Marian did mention, is the fact that to a certain extent, when we are having discussions with government, it's sometimes very tricky that you're looked at as people that needs to be regulated, not as very, very close partners. And sometimes it becomes, I see General Katumba is smiling at me, which is very true, but sometimes it takes us very, very long to encourage government to make certain adjustments that are very, very important. So yes, I totally agree with Dr. Marian that government needs to embrace partnership with the people in the private sector, but also we need to build a good relationship that we're not looked at as people that needs to be regulated. We've made a number of submissions, even when it comes to like stuff like road safety. We've made a number of submissions, and I think our leadership are aware that we have been encouraging our drivers to stop by traffic light and follow some of the rules and regulations. But also we've been requesting government that, look, these people want to stop by the traffic light, but there's no clarity on where they're supposed to stop when they reach the traffic light. And also there are a lot of accidents that are happening, or that as a result of these borders sharing the road infrastructure with four-wheel cars. I think there's need to be special consideration for this vulnerable group of people. Because the truth is, in Nairobi, they have gone as far as building special lane for borders. In the Netherlands, they have gone as far as actually allocating parking areas by the traffic light for like people who use bicycles. They have also gone as far as building special roads for these people. Because they are part of the city, we really cry out and say, I think let's consider these people and continue supporting them. The biggest issue that we have as young people is the fact that border is today the second largest employer after agriculture. So most of us are not employed. Most of us are not going to get any immediate option for employment, and border has absorbed us. It has changed our life, and we feel that border contributes also, of course, to making the city what it is. But then there's also need consistent adjustment to making sure that they are accommodated in the city.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ricky. From the Q&A tab, I'm just going to read some of the questions very quickly. I'd like to ask the panelists to take note of these questions so that when we come to you, you can respond to them. But also you are able to go to the Q&A section and type out answers directly to the people who have asked these questions. The first question I'm going to highlight here is to Engineer Kateba. Why are we still using traditional trains, yet electric trains would be the best option? Are our plans, years behind where we should be? Dr. Marianne, what mechanism post-COVID does the private sector propose to be established for public-private dialogue, where the views will be considered, or where they will be consulted and add value to government thinking? We haven't yet had General Katumba Wamala speak, but there are many questions in the chat section for the General, and when I give him an opportunity as our other special guest to speak and actually to help us come to the close of our webinar, one of the things we'd like you to take note of or to respond to is, despite the fact that Uganda has very good scholars, why is it that for a long time, Uganda has failed to get an approved transport policy? And I will tell you that this question came from a scholar from Makerere University. Then could lack of the policy above be the reason for the lack of intermodal planning exhibited in Uganda's infrastructure development? Case in point, the construction of Entebbe Expressway terminals in Munyonyo links to poorly constructed roads, i.e. Munyonyo Salama, Munyonyo Nanganda, Lukuli Machindie, then Munyonyo Gaba Kansanga. If these roads were good, the expressway would achieve the purpose. Then for Mrs. Jennifer Mwejuche, I just repeat, could we please take note of these questions? And I'm going to come to each of you, the panelists, and you just respond to the questions very quickly. Mrs. Jennifer Mwejuche. Mrs. Jennifer Mwejuche, is it true this should be technical team, if you could help me mute the person whose audio is coming through. So for Jennifer Mwejuche, is it true this should have been so? However, the Ministry of Works and Transport had a policy on transport, but not with logistic components. This is in reference to the question that has been put to General Katumba Wamala. So from 2018, private sector pressurized the government, and now this is a new policy. But does it take care of the logistics side of things? Okay, then on social media, we have a question from Isaac Ephraim Tumusime. I think this is on Twitter. He says, what will happen to the numerous number of taxis that do not meet the testing standards for the government? We do not have functional disposal and recycling areas for vehicles. And also I think there's a whole issue of, we come up with very many good plans, and then politics comes in, and then the taxis come together and lobby, the bodabodas come together and lobby, and end up defeating a good policy. What's being done to actually go beyond that hurdle? Then for Honorable Betty Amongin, there are actually many questions for you. We've highlighted some of them. Honorable Byanyima, what is your comment on the use of Kira electric buses and their use in the metropolitan area? You did refer to the fact that yesterday 2 of their buses, the buses that were assembled here, were actually on the roads. All right. I'm going to ask other questions, but let's respond to those, and let's start with Engineer Kateba. You're the one on my screen, so let's begin with you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, Engineer, we can hear you. Go right ahead.
There were several questions which I've been trying to answer online, but one of them, of those you highlighted, was the issue of electrification, I believe.
Yes, please. There's a question of electrification and just the fact that isn't our planning so many years behind where the world is going? And we even saw that with the, the meter gauge and the standard gauge as well.
Thank you very much. Well, most of the infrastructure projects are socially and economically justified. And electrification is justified usually if you have high volumes, if you have large cities astride of your transport system, such that you have high mass transport networks. Because development of electrical transport, rail transport system is expensive, it must be recovered. But also you must have reliable electricity supply. And in our current circumstance, that was not feasible. However, in the consideration for the standard gauge railway, because that is designed as a mass transport system, we have included electric transport system. For the Kampala metropolitan area, in the initial phases of 5 to 10 years, we are looking at the diesel as the main transport mover. But going 10 years and beyond, we will be looking at electrical rail systems, both on the heavy rail, which is the main line that we have, and on the light rail. There was also a question on what are when we talk about medium term and long term, what are we looking at? We have immediate plans, mostly which have been expedited because of COVID. That is looking at 6 to 18 months from now. And those are looking at not necessarily infrastructure, but operational improvements, like provision of locomotives, container handling equipment, improvement of the rolling stock, and some improvement on the track, but not heavy overhaul, because overhaul will also actually create problems of line closure and so on. So bringing it forward now would not help. So we are looking at increasing the number of locomotives and improving also their reliability and safety by investing in improved maintenance, purchase of spares, but also buying an extra fleet of at least 8 medium-sized locomotives that would allow us to move up to Eldoret and Naivasha to pick cargo on top of carrying the cargo from Malaba to Kampala.
All right.
Is there any other immediate question I should answer?
I think you can go back to the chat and just respond to the ones there, because I'm looking at our time and it may not allow for you to respond to other questions here. So let me move to...
Maybe for the sake of many who are just listening, I wanted to answer one other question. Somebody asked, can we use the public sector to develop a rail system just like they have done in the USA? That's a very interesting question that we have looked at policy level, but I want to make a different time in life when you could combine transport and raw material concessions in one. But some lessons from that system we are trying to copy by involving the private sector in rolling stock leasing, in terminals management, in logistics and transport over government established or national rail owned infrastructure.
All right, thank you, Engineer. Mrs. Mwijuche, would like to come over to you. Could you start with this question? Transportation and logistics sector must have a master plan for its operation and infrastructure provision, especially the provision of well-equipped regional logistic hubs. The hubs would have been useful in enforcing the president's directive that truck drivers must stop at designated places. What is your take on that? This is a question from Dr. Frederick Omolo.
Thank you. Thank you, Frederick and the listeners. It is true that initially Minister of Works and Transport had a policy on transport, but had not included logistics until when we came in as private sector. And of course, the demand for these logistics facilities started increasing, and we had to go back. And actually that's what delayed. I know that Honorable Katumba will answer that on his part. That's what delayed to have the policy in place, is because we had to go back on the drawing board to include logistics as part of transport policy. And so currently there is a draft of transport and logistics policy that has been already finalized and is supposed to be undergoing the rest of the procedures to be concluded as a working document. And so master plan wouldn't be in existence before we have that policy. But I'm also aware I've been engaging, we have been engaging as the industry transport ministry, and we have learned that there is also a master plan now for logistics. It must be understood or appreciated that there is no transport without logistics facilities. Like perhaps Executive Director of UNRA mentioned, whenever any mode of transport reaches its final stage, there is a need to transship or to go to another mode of transport. Normally, logistics hubs are very crucial and important as part and the parcel of the whole transport chain. And so in Uganda, I think for some time, these facilities had not been looked at as practical. Until 2017, when we began as private sector engaging and envisioning for the sector, especially focusing on Uganda becoming a hub, we started echoing the need that we should look at and cluster different markets, both internal markets in terms of distribution to critical economic active areas, and also looking at our regional markets, so that then at each stage of our regions, there are facilities that can be able to serve this region. And so that was the background to us being participating and making sure that we now have a policy that is combining transport and logistics. And government has, Minister of Works, I actually had a chance to go through that policy, and it is very clear now. It is committed to develop Uganda as a hub. And for that matter, we believe that the future is going to be much better than it has been in as far as hubs are concerned.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Honorable Byanyima, on the question in relation to Kira electric buses. Honorable Byanyima. Please go right ahead. Yes.
Yes, I'm impressed by those young men who have been very keen in promoting that particular in the area of their competence, especially the buses that they are trying to make. And if they can, like they said, make 8 buses per week, per month, that's a good progress. To me, I would want to have a touch of reality. I don't feel at this particular time that we should be lamenting about some of these issues that have been outstanding for quite many, because our resource envelope has remained the same for some time. And we cannot no longer continue borrowing money, but we want to say, if we have had this, why don't we set priorities among priorities? Because our priorities now is to use the resources that we have, we are assured of, to ensure that we can improve our status. Because I had the ED of UNRWA talking that they don't have the money, they would need more money. For how long can we continue demanding for money? It is true, roads will be made, but the more we make more road tarmacking without even maintenance, we shall be in problems. To me, I feel that, I remember in 1986, by the time this NLM was ushered in, we used to have quite a number of trucks taking our coffee to the sea, to Mombasa. But as soon as they came, they said, let the railway take over. You remember what happened? You can't believe how these trucks are damaging our roads. The moment we get an alternative, we shall be home and dry. And then there was a question about the buses, that how shall we take care of the operational costs without increasing. Hello?
Yes, without increasing the cost to the final user.
To our passengers. It hurts, but that's why we are calling upon government, one way or the other in a discussion, to see how we can really mitigate on the cost, because we don't want to hurt the passengers. They are also really like any other person who have been in lockdown. They don't have the money, but yet we want to improve and take our passengers. And two, on the side of hygiene, we shall ensure that we no longer have crowds at the bus parks. We want only a few people who are coming in a line, organized, to ensure that even our buses are sprayed, the sanitizers, washing their hands. It is going to be all over the day. And we shall be measuring up to the standards that the Minister of Health is requiring from us.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Dr. Marianne, what mechanisms post-COVID does the private sector propose to be established for the public-private dialogue, where their views will be considered or where they will be consulted and add value to government's thinking?
Thank you. The public-private dialogue we started through the Private Sector Foundation of Uganda. We started it about 2-3 years ago, where we put the entire economy of Uganda in 12 sectors, and each sector is supposed to identify the ministries they relate with and sign formal memorandum of understanding on how they work together. The National Logistics Platform is the pilot that we started 2 years ago and signed a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Works and Transport. We are signing one soon with the Ministry of Trade. We are signing another one with the Ministry of Finance. The sectors that each part of the economy relates with is supposed to have a formal engagement with the relevant ministries. And the entire private sector foundation, the chair is supposed to sign one with the prime minister at that level, so that the public and the private are engaging formally and relating formally, and they realize that we are partners and move together. So we have put the structure in place on how it's supposed to be done. And that's why I said that we need to the public sector to embrace that kind of arrangement through mindset change. I know the general smiled when I talked about mindset change, but it's very, very important for the mindset to change and to engage formally, not to invite us to discuss when they feel like, and when they don't feel like, they leave us out. So we have provided for it. It's what is remaining is the public sector to embrace it and accept.
Okay. Thank you very much, Doctor. If you look at our program, in a minute, I should be inviting General Katumba Wamala, if we will manage to end at 11:30, and that really was the plan. But because of the questions that continue to come in and the fact that we would like our panelists to respond to them, we beg your indulgence that we'll just go a few minutes over 11:30. I would like now to hand over to Honorable Betty Amongi, the Minister for Kampala and Metropolitan Affairs. There are a number of questions I did read to you, and I'm sure you've seen some of them in the chat. If you could go ahead, Honorable, and respond.
I have answered actually most of the questions.
Excellent.
They were about 15. I think I've answered most of them, if not all of them. I don't know whether there's a specific one that you want me to answer live.
Let's answer this one that came via Twitter. The person who was asking what will happen to the numerous number of taxis that do not meet the testing standards for the government. And this is assuming that we actually will go ahead and make them, take these taxis through verification, the mandatory testing. And General Katumba will also respond to that because it's his ministry that's taking a lead. But yes, go ahead.
Yes, if you don't meet the standard, the law is very clear. You get off the road. If you can repair your vehicles and come back with a better vehicle, or you can buy a new vehicle, then you will be readmitted back onto the road. But it is mandatory. However, because we recognize as a ministry and jointly working with the works, we have had a schedule of how we are going to plan this operation. We are going to give a grace period up to December 31st, within which people should get prepared to engage in all the regulatory framework, abide by them, pay fees, do all that is required within what will give them to be able to operate. So a grace period will be given up to about December, and then enforcement will begin. In this 6 months, we have a total of about 13,000 taxis operating in the city, 200,000 border borders operating in the city. As Honorable Nathan has said, for buses, we also have quite a number operating in the city. So we hope that within these 6 months, all of them would have booked the system, and they would have undergone the mandatory inspection. And the Ministry of Works will issue the mandatory certificate that you have passed the test and you can operate. So once you do not have the Ministry of Works permit that you've passed the mandatory test, then you will not operate in the city.
All right. The other part of that question is in relation to recycling and the fact that we do not have functional disposal and recycling areas for vehicles. The one that we have on the northern bypass between Chevando and Kalerwe doesn't qualify, and you can see how cars are heaped there, and the place, they've already run out of space.
Our engineering department is working on the overall program of the issue of recycling. And we have a company from Germany that has already given us proposals. We are opening up a PPP, public-private partnership, with many organizations. Unfortunately, when they were meant to come and examine all the land we have and the plan we have, feasibility study, then the COVID-19 came in. So I want to assure the person that we are going to be able to have companies under private-public partnership that will be able to undertake the recycling of not only the cars, but garbage and glass and solid waste and all other aspects within the context of recycling.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable. Dear participants, we are 3 minutes late. General Edward Katumba Wamala, who is supposed to be coming on, should have come on 3 minutes ago. But again, I beg your indulgence that we'll just go over a few minutes beyond the time that we had said this webinar will be ending, because we're having a really fruitful discussion, and some of the things that we're discussing, we really have to tie them up before we come to an end. Please take note that the questions that you're asking are actually being documented. So the responses you're receiving in the Q&A room are actually being taken note of, and they will form part of the report that comes out after this webinar. All right, now allow me to introduce the Honorable Minister of Works and Transport, General Edward Katumba Wamala. General Edward Katumba Wamala is the minister, as I have stated, and he's held that position from December 2019. A vastly experienced public servant, he previously served the country as State Minister for Works and Transport from January 2017 to December 2019, when he became the full minister. He served as Chief of the Defense Forces, the UPDF, from 2013 to 2017. He was Commander of the Land Forces of the UPDF from 2006 to 2013, and he was the Inspector General of Police 2001 to 2005. Before his appointment as IGP, he was a career soldier, serving in various assignments between 1980 and the year 2001, where he was the commander of Uganda's military operations in the Democratic Republic of Congo. From the time he took over as the Minister of Works and Transport, very many have commended him for bringing private sector on board and actually listening and taking their views on board. General Edward Katumba Wamala, you are very welcome.
Thank you very much. Am I on?
Yes, General, you are.
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to thank CASO for organizing this dialogue and interaction. And also want to appreciate all the participants and all my fellow discussants on this platform. I want first to be, well, I think the question was what opportunities are presenting themselves or can be presented in the post-COVID era, because the COVID is here and it is here, and we don't know for how long it's going to be here. But are we going to be sitting and lamenting and freezing because of COVID? Maybe no. I would want to start off on a point of optimism, just like our president has been, where he has been saying, let's take advantage, let's see what comes out of this, and let's be optimistic with the future instead of being pessimistic of what will happen. I want to thank the two, Madame Mizuchi and Madame Miriam, for acknowledging that the relationship between our ministry and the private sector is very strong, and that's how we want it to. That's really what we want it to be. We want it to be more needed than possibly what it is now, because there is no way we are going to be operating in isolation and then and virtues of each other. So we should really be working together, understand each other. We are not so much just, it's not just about regulating, but it's, but definitely we must regulate. But we should regulate also with the understanding of each other and what we need to benefit and how we need to work together to move our country forward. I'll start off with a. I will also come to the issue of where somebody was raising that, and I think it was Honorable Byanyima who said, get more money from UNRWA, put them in the leverage. I think that would be like robbing Peter to pay Paul, because I think both systems are very relevant. As you heard Kajina say, when you do the trunk roads, you need to do the connecting roads into the production areas, because then there's no way you're going to have your product onto the trunk and onto the railway and onto the water, because our country is an exporting country. So we need to have all those connections done. So I think the solution is not really to stick for one and promote another. I think it is trying to strike a good balance between the two. And as one person raised, we may never get all the money. I think again it was Honorable Yanuma, yes. And this is why we are now promoting PPP projects, so that we can work again in partnership. Like what you see very soon coming on is the Ginger Kampala Expressway, which is a PPP project. So this is how we think we should be moving to ensure that both the rail and the road are all moving together. Now, in the post-COVID and the effects of COVID, of course, if I could, I will take it through the impacts on the different sectors of the transport. If I'll start with air, of course, there is what has happened now, and the transport on air transport, especially passenger transport. I think it's going to take a while. I think COVID has sent a chill down the spine of people, and I think passenger traveling is going to take a while. But cargo transport is something which could be promoted. If we increase on the production, for example, what the government did and what the minister has done with it, is to expand the airport. Now the airport has been expanded, the storage capacity for fresh cargo has been expanded from 25,000, from tons to 100,000 tons worth of cargo which we can hold at the airport. So we should be taking advantage of that and promote the cargo transport now by producing more and exporting more. I think Madam Mujisha was talking about the volumes of what we could export. Again, if we could work like in the region, if an aircraft came in from China and they can't get enough volumes from Uganda, can they pick from Entebbe, pick some from Nairobi, pick from Mombasa, in Dar es Salaam, and then get back to Guangzhou with full capacity? These are some of the things we may need to be looking at to see how to take advantage of the negative effects of the COVID. But of course, some of those negatives may be very difficult to undo. Like there'll definitely be like a scale down of staff. CAA, Uganda Airlines, they may have to scale down staff because that's the reality. There's no way you're going to have the same numbers going through when the industry is not operating for a year or something like that. So we'll be called to have new investment on the airport in terms of being able to achieve the social distancing. We may need to widen some of the provisions at the airport, like the departure lounge, the arrivals. We may have to find a way of expanding them. We may have to invest in things like walk-through sanitizer facilities, because again, it may be difficult to handle big volumes if we are going to use the same facilities we have. So all these may be opportunities which again may have to come up. Now on the issue of the road transport, and I think as somebody said, this was a wake-up call, it was an eye-opener. when we all of a sudden we found that our transport companies, the drivers need to have rest areas, And on most of our trunk roads, we had not provided for good rest areas. So this is an area which we need to really promote and invest in. We saw the challenges where we have started moving around to check where could be the good rest areas, which have got the necessary facilities for the drivers, because as he's resting, definitely he needs to have a wash up, he needs to refresh and be able to get back on the truck. But I think also the transporters have realized that actually it doesn't make sense for a driver to make 10 stops. If somebody is leaving Maraba to go to Mirama Hills, it doesn't need to make 10 stops. Stop in Aruerere, stop in Mbiko, stop in, it was not making sense. And I think they've realized that, and they're going to be changing the way business has been done. I think they have also realized, as Madame Sonia said, that they are not taking good care of the drivers. They are taking good care of the trucks. But what about the drivers? What about their health? What about their well-being? Have they been educating them about unnecessary spending of money along the route, or whatever it gives him on the route is spent on the way, and then when it goes back, it's as empty as a church mouse. So these are all lessons which we have learned, and I think in the new normal, things are going to change, and definitely we have all to change some way. The other day we were having again a video conferencing with my counterparts from Kenya and Rwanda, and we realized how much we are saving on travel. Instead of me traveling to Nairobi or traveling to Rwanda to discuss a matter which could take about 15, 30 minutes, we were able to discuss on chat. So this is also an advantage of, I think Honorable Madame Sonia talked about this, and saying we can take advantage of this new normal now, that we can do video conferencing, we can hold conferences without necessarily traveling back and forth. Now, on the transport sector in Kampala, of course, I think Madame Amongi has ably told you what are the plans in offing, and I think they are for the good of the city. They are good for the citizens. We are trying to promote non-motorized transport, as we have heard. Already, KCCA has made some roads for that purpose. We are looking forward to having a better organized city, which is with less pollution. As you see, I'm a promoter of Mission Green. We love good environment. So I think we'll have a better city with better organized transport and less traffic jam. Somebody had made a comment that in Uganda, on average, we spend about 2.5 hours in a day in jam, and that's all time wasted. We hope that in the new normal now, with the new city and the new transport system and the new transport arrangement, we are going to have less of that. When we talk about the reduction in numbers of for example, in taxis and buses, of course they'll have an impact on the amount of money somebody will have to pay to do the journey. It has a positive, it may have a negative, but it also has a positive. The positive is that you are not going to unnecessarily travel. This business of saying, let me go and visit my brother, let me go and visit you really think twice. Should I spend all that money just for the sake of traveling? Or that journey which I'm making, is it a must make? So these are some of the things which will, and maybe also even the behavior. Our behavior is going to change. If we take the positives of COVID, which has brought like the sanitation, if we continue with that sanitization and we continue with that kind of discipline in that area, definitely even our hospitals are going to have less people in the hospital as sick because of dirty environment and dirty cultures which we have. It's very interesting now that these days nobody even extends a hand to shake a hand and a word of greeting. It's becoming a new normal now. It's no longer something which is looked at as abnormal. So these are some of the things which I think we have to accept. I just got a report on yesterday. I got a communication from the UN Secretary General in charge of road safety, and was raising a concern about our accidents on the roads. And he said from 2017, we had moved from 2,397 accidents to about 3,880. and it was a big concern. But as you have heard from Mr. Byanyima, now the casualty ward in Murago has been kind of free of recent because of less accidents on the road, because possibly the borders are not throwing people back, up and down every day, and so we have had some of that relief. So we may need to look at COVID, the post-COVID time, in terms of the positive aspects of it, and take advantage of that. And that's my take. That I think the interaction again with the members of the public and also the private sector. I think this is where we need to go. We have to interact more and be able to to take advantage. Of course, some sectors of the economy will be affected, as you have already witnessed, like tourism, like the social aspects of it, dances, discos, and all those, they may be affected. Some aspects of the economy, like in my case, in the transport, the air transport may be affected, but surely we must promote rail and water. And the government had already planned that. Although now what it means is us to move faster than what it was. We may need to move faster on that. And this is possibly what you have seen, as you heard Mr. Kateva talking about. Plans are there to revive the meter gauge, to get the water transport moving, so that we can get as many trucks off the road as possible. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, General. Just before you end, if you could just give us quick answers to, government has been emphasizing the industrial parks.
Yes.
Is there a plan to connect these industrial parks, for example, with the railway?
Yes, the government has a big plan, again, in terms of promoting the water and rail transport. We are in advanced stages of developing the Bukasa port, which connects to the industrial park, the Namamvi Industrial Park. There will be a spar of the standard gauge lorry and also a spar of the meter gauge, which will be connecting to the Bukasa port. And that will mean that most of the logistics now, which has been coming on road, will now be coming by water, which of course will again reduce on the cost of maintaining our roads. The industrial parks will be connected to the railway. The standard gauge has a number of spars right from Tororo, linking to the Tororo industrial area, but also to Namamvi industrial area.
All right. General, I am a journalist, and if my memory serves me right, around a year and a half ago, I did host a team from UNRA that was talking about the launch of these, resting areas for the trucks. More than a year and a half later, we're still talking about this as a plan, and yet it seemed to have been launched. There were even timelines. How come, we're still coming up with plans and not seeing them through?
Yeah, again, as you see, these rest parks, government doesn't intend to develop them as their own facility. We identify where they are, and we get the designs done, which we already have because it's an East African project along the Northern Corridor. And then we get private investors to invest in those parks so that they are run as private entity and not as government facilities. So that's the way to go. That's the trend. So I think the private sector is hearing. They must all be ears. They know this. So all they need is to say, UNRA, where is the identified area for the rest park and where is the plan for it? And then they develop and run it as a private entity.
Thank you very much, General Katumba Wamala, and a big thank you to all our guests, our special guests, the Minister for Kampala and Metropolitan Affairs, and the rest of our discussants. You have made this discussion quite fruitful. I'd like to ask the technical team to put up one of the polls. This poll just takes a few seconds. If you could put that poll up as I let you know what's going to happen next. Something will just pop up on your screen, and when it does, just choose one of the options. The poll I see here is, what means of transport did you most use before the lockdown? And the options are private car, taxi, special hire, or Uber, boda boda, and bicycles. I'll just tell the panelists that unfortunately you're not one of the voters. So you are part of those who are just seeing the way people are voting. So yes, again, thank you very much for responding to for sending in your questions. The questions that came through have been responded to by our panelists, and we're taking note of those. We have a team that's doing the rapporteuring, and please, even if we didn't ask your question out loud, if it's been responded to, we'll take note of it. And even if it wasn't responded to, we'll take note of it, and we will make efforts to make those questions reach the person they were intended for. We just have a few more seconds for the poll. So if you haven't voted yet, please go ahead and vote. Okay, I think we are done. Most people here used private cars. And I think the next is border borders, then taxis. Honorable Minister, I don't know, considering the border borders came out and said, we've heard they want to chase us, but for us, we are going nowhere. You can see even the people on this webinar were using border borders. So, I hope this will, inform the approach that you are going to take. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to bring this to a close. We're 8 minutes beyond the time we said would be ending. Of course, this is not about the time, it's about the discussion, and it really has been a fruitful discussion. Again, a special thank you to all our guests and participants. I'd like now to invite Honorable Benson Obuo-Ogwal, who is going to move a vote of thanks, and we'll end this session in prayer. We began in prayer, we will end with a prayer. Honorable, welcome.
Hello.
Yes, Honorable Ogwal.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's my single honor and privilege now to thank all those who participated in this wonderful webinar, and a very special appreciation to the General Edward Katumba Wamala and Honorable Betty Ambongi, who are both ministers. You really did us proud by availing us with your time. I'm so happy to meet you again. We have been colleagues in the House and with Betty Ambongi too, and Honorable Nathan Bianyima. I want to thank all speakers who have been very up to date in their presentations. They're very precise. I want to thank all of them. And I must mention the names: Jennifer Mujuche, Dr. Marian Sebunya, Engineer Charles Kateba, and again, Honorable Nathan Bianyima, and also Mrs. Kajina, who came in and also enlightened us very well. Participants, your questions have been very precise and very eye-opening, and we thank you. I believe all your issues and the questions raised will be, captured and probably in due time will be turned into policy issues that the government can take up, and that's the challenge for us in Castle. For those who may not know, I'm a leading member of Castle, actually a founding member and a board member too. Otherwise, the engagement has been very, very powerful. I want to thank the Castle team. Many people have been in the background doing wonderful things, led by our own Magara, our chair, and Kathy Mohumuza, who has been there in the background, plus many others. We really want to appreciate you. Shall we now humble ourselves in prayer? Almighty and ever-living God, we want to thank you for this great opportunity that we have had together to rub our minds together and discuss very pertinent issues regarding logistics and specifically transport. I want to thank you, Lord, for everyone who participated. We thank you for the wonderful interactions and interventions and the questions and answers that came up. We most especially want to thank you for our special guests, the two ministers who were very, very, very useful in this whole webinar. We thank you, Lord, for all the speakers. We thank you for the itself, which put this webinar together. And we pray, Father, that all the good and novel points that have somehow surfaced in this particular webinar will find their way into implementable policies of government, while the challenges which have been unearthed could be turned into opportunities, Father. We also pray that the country, and especially the government and the citizens, do learn from the crises that have been created by COVID-19 and turn these disasters and devastation into something good and new in our socio-economic life. We want to bless the moderator who has led us through this very, very well. And we thank everyone. We pray for everyone. We bless them. And we thank you, Lord God, for sustaining us. At an opportune time when we do this, because this is the first of many in this series that we'll do, we ask you, Father, that you will enable us to be useful to this nation and to this country. We thank you. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much, Honorable Benson Obua Ogwal, and thank you very much all our guests, special guests, the ministers, the guest discussants, the participants. Thank you very much. Like Dr. Magara said, we're going to have weekly engagements. The engagement next week is on the education sector. So if you are interested in the education sector, and you know it's another sector that impacts very heavily on our country, our economy, please, when you get the link, register and be part of the discussion. From me and the entire team here, thank you very much, and God bless you. Bye-bye.